I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and co-owner of PurePleasureShop.com.
I'm April, VP of the cutting-edge sex toy company Hot Octopus, and I dedicate my life to the business of sex.
We are on a mission to teach you how to have hot sex, deep intimacy, and how to make your own rules for who you are as a sexual being.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Revolution. Want to learn more? Go to shamelesssex.com.
And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use code SHAMELESSSEX at PurePleasureShop.com.
You were listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, welcome to Shameless Sex Podcast. This episode, let's just talk about the title, the topic right away. Cuckolding.
Fuego topic.
Fuego. And a little bit of hot wifing. And some people might be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You will find out. But it's actually a hot topic. There's actually a lot of people that are into this. And we did an episode where we talked about this a little bit. And maybe we didn't have all of the information or accurate information. And we got a number of emails from awesome listeners that gave us more up-to-date information and also a reference for this wonderful speaker. So this is super exciting and fun and playful and interesting. I mean, you'll discover what cuckolding is. It's a relationship dynamic where essentially the vulva owner gets to go and have sex with whoever she wants, and her penis-owning individual is into it and supports that, and the penis owner is monogamous. So stay tuned to learn more about that. Have your mind
It did
blown.
take me a minute to wrap my head around it, though, the concept. And the same with hot wifing. I still am attempting to grasp in my, maybe it's my teeny tiny receptive brain for certain things. Sometimes it takes me longer to digest. So I'm like, oh, I get it. But I have to listen to the episode again once it airs, which will be in a few days from when we're recording this. But
if you met the most amazing man ever, and not ever, but just you met an amazing man, and you're like, wow, I'm super into him. He's like, by the way,
you mean like legend?
Yeah, like legend. But he's like, by the way, I'm into cuckolding. I get really turned on by you having sex and being intimate with other people and sharing your stories about it, and I just want to be committed to you. Would you be like, fuck yes, or no, or let me think about that?
I would say I need to think about it.
What about hot wifing? So you're with an amazing partner. It's super aligned. It feels really good. And they're like, I want to watch you be intimate with other people. I want to watch you be desired. I want you to flirt with other people. And I get to watch that and be like, that's my girl. And I want you to come back to me and share about how wonderful it was. And would that be interesting to you?
More interesting.
Okay, more interesting. So less of the thing I didn't add was the humiliation aspect that's often in cuckolding, but not always in a negative way.
And typically this is gendered, right? So cuckolding is, for lack of a better way to put it, is it typically the penis-owning human in the relationship that wants to watch the vulva owner?
Generally.
And then hot wifing's the opposite of that, or is it can go all directions?
Well, I think she describes it. Is that a hawk attacking? That's a hawk attacking a seagull outside. It's wild out there. National Geographic here in Santa Cruz. I think she describes it as, again, there is this added power dynamic or maybe humiliation thing in cuckolding, and we'll get into this. If we're messing this up right now, everyone just listen and she corrects us. And then hot wifing, it is actually more the penis owner that's calling the shots, right? It is more like, I get off to seeing you wanted and desired, and they're I guess more orchestrating it, but they have more power. They're not in the humiliation aspect.
Again, this is why I think I need to listen again, because I was taking pieces away and processing in my brain and active listening, and then I was like, okay, I need to remember that. So it's not that difficult to conceptualize, right? It's just I need to listen to the episode again, which is exactly why we record these things. Yeah. So they can be evergreen tools for everyone out there that's interested.
And I guess as I feel into it, the humiliation thing really isn't my personal jam, because
I can't imagine
I'm like overly
wanting
nice
to humiliate people.
But more,
get over there right now. Just kidding. Are you okay?
Yeah. Wait. Oh, you don't feel good. Okay, I'll never do that again.
I'm sorry. Let me hold you. Let me stroke your hair.
You're so wonderful. Okay, I promise. I love you.
You're a terrible humiliatrix.
It's all about you,
Amy.
No, I'm definitely not humiliatrix. That's for sure.
I could do it.
Yeah, you could.
We have a friend that'd be really good at it too.
Oh my God, she's designed
for
that.
That hurt my feelings.
Oh, I'll hug you now. I'm sorry. I'll never say that again. You're the best.
You bitch.
I'm just practicing.
Yeah, that's great.
I know I can't do it. He already froze.
You know what else takes some good practice?
What?
Stroking the vulva.
Ooh.
Internally or externally.
Ooh.
And how do we get better at that?
OMG, yes.
Not better. How do we learn more about that?
OMGS.com/shameless.
Actually, you can get better with it too.
It's true.
Now we've been with them and access to all of their portals for almost 3 years now?
Yeah. Huge fans.
It's a tool that I know I use on the reg when I want to escape some of only going to my toys all the time. I'm like, what other techniques are out there that people are using to orgasm or to get to know their vulvas better? Or what can my partner do to learn about my vulva and techniques better or different?
Yeah, it's brilliant. So it's an online database. You buy either season 1 or season 2 or both. Season 1 is about external stimulation and pleasure, so techniques that you maybe have never thought of or seen. Season 2 is about internal stimulation and pleasure. It's completely research-based on thousands of vulva owners and how they like to have their orgasms or just pleasure, and is very tasteful. And so it's all these videos and informational pieces on how you can try these things out. It's changed people's lives.
And the money goes to more research.
Exactly.
To more pleasure research. And there's not a lot of organizations out there, y'all, that are researching pleasure. There's more and more, but OMGS is phenomenal. So we love supporting what they do.
So go check it out. It's changed the lives of us, my clients, our listeners. OMGS.com/shameless. You get $5 off. And then once you buy the season, you own it forever. You keep watching it over and over again. And who knows? Maybe I think they're in the running. They will have one for anal. They'll have one for penis owners.
For toys.
Now
the toys is coming next. So stay tuned, y'all.
So exciting. Okay, so a sex question. I'm almost 40 and have been married for 9 years. 3 years ago, my partner realized that he's trans and has transitioned, so F to M. So born, the doctor said, you are a female, and now identifies as a man. Sex between us has gotten to be very sporadic. I am having a really hard time finding my husband sexy. He is a man now. These past few years, I've been going to therapy and working on a lot of trauma from childhood. For a moment, I thought I was bisexual, but I've never really wanted to pursue a relationship with a man. I've had an occasional fantasy, but that's about it. I've also had a lot of issues surrounding sex. I've had erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and delayed ejaculation. So that has also made me adverse to having sex. And my husband wants more sex, but I don't find him attractive. And I don't think I will be able to. I've also started seeing my sex therapist or a sex therapist, but I'm pretty sure that my relationship will end. Is there any advice that you can give? My husband says that it shouldn't matter what he is now, that I shouldn't have an issue having sex with him. It's a very, very tricky question.
It is. It's heavily loaded with a lot of there's a lot of history. There's a lot of transitional aspects to digest. And I'll say, so I want to speak on something that I didn't experience, but someone very close to me in my life that I've known for a few years now was not a similar situation because she was and is married to someone that transitioned. It was a high school sweetheart. She married her best friend, her love of her life, her person, right? And he decided not too long ago, actually, before COVID, that he wanted to transition to become a different a human that would be considered a female, right? So transitioning from M to F, and did the transition, and they have children, and then COVID happened, and she, my friend, wanted to try to stay in the relationship because she loved this person that she had known for so long, and it became more and more challenging because the person that that she married now wasn't the person that she fell in love with as much. Even though it was just a gender transition, she felt that it just was so different and hard, and they're still trying to figure it out, and it's leaning towards that they won't, because they're going to walk away peacefully and lovingly and still co-parent. And then their children will have two moms, and that's also a whole different dynamic. Their children are very young, and she just told me that the sex had changed, and it was difficult for the same kind of thing that this human's in. And I think they've been together for 20 years, and so I am compassionate to your situation and empathetic to what you're going through, because it's hard. I tend to say I'm pansexual. Still, it depends on the human, and if the person that you fell in love with changes and it's not the person you thought, maybe or maybe not, you will feel the same way about them after they do this transition. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's bad. That's not at all what I'm saying. I just think that if you keep trying everything and you're having a lot of therapy within it and you're going to a sex therapist and it's still not shifting, it might be time to change the relationship.
Yes, you're transitioning the relationship, title, dynamic. And there are things that we can learn and things that we can shape and shift. And some things I don't think we can, or too much work to do, or, I mean, just like the argument for someone who's straight and wishes that they weren't straight and wanted to be into all genders might have a hard time opening up to that, just like someone who is queer and, you know, society says queer is bad, and we certainly do not agree with that. But then, you know, that we've heard that they've gone to, what are the things where like the religious Christian things where they're trying to convert them?
Pray the gay away?
You pray the gay away. And that doesn't work. And so
it was like the gay boot camps where people had feelings for the same sex. They would be in it was
they'd
like
send them away.
There's movies about it. Yeah.
And so we don't always have a choice in who we are attracted to and who we are interested in. And there's certain things that we can learn, and just what I want to say is agree with April. There's nothing wrong with you. If you're not a bad person. I know your husband's saying it shouldn't matter what he is now. And I think that is important what he's saying, because there's an opportunity for you to lovingly let him know that you love and accept him, that this doesn't mean that you don't love him. And it also is okay for you to not have sexual attraction if you don't have that. You can only honor what's true for you. Obviously, you're doing a lot of work. You have a therapist and now a sex therapist. So it's not like you're just, you know, sticking your head in the mud and ignoring what's going on. You are doing the work. And if you still are finding that the attraction isn't there, you know, what do you do? What do you do with that? And this also happens in plenty of relationships when it isn't about gender.
And it's not like you just have to leave the relationship. You could see and talk to your partner and see if they'd be willing to open it up, or if
be non-sexual life partners,
non-sexual, which is very common, especially in law. But it depends on what both people agree to, and working together to come to a solution that feels good to both of you.
Yeah, and one thing I would say, if you're working with a sex therapist or a therapist, also to work with someone who actually specializes in this, whether someone who's worked with trans folks or partners of trans folks, or ideally both, would be something that would be helpful. It's like, for myself, as someone who works with clients, I don't have a lot of that experience, so I probably would send you to someone else. So just not saying fire your sex therapist, but make sure that they understand the dynamic of what you're working with. And then some references. I have not personally checked out these books. I just looked them up. There are books on being the partner of a trans individual and what that experience can be like, and also for support. So some references: the Trans Partner Handbook, and also the Reflective Workbook for Partners of Transgender People, Your Transition as Your Partner Transitions. Because it is that too, right? Your partner's transitioning and your life is transitioning along with them. It's not just a one-sided thing as well. Hopefully that's helpful. And just, I don't know. I didn't read that you're like, I'm a bad person or anything, but I wonder if it's in this writing, you said he about your partner, you said husband. So clearly you have adopted this new, this person as they are. This is how your partner truly is. And that's wonderful. And I hope that you're also being gentle with yourself and taking care of yourself, because this is your transition as well.
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you wrote us and asked for advice. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good advice, Amy.
Good advice, Chip.
All right, you ready for Venus's bio?
I am. I love Venus.
Yeah, she's great. And all right. From the moment Venus learned about cuckolding relationships 6 years ago, she knew it fit exactly who she was, and she dove right in. Venus began writing about her stories and experiences of dating, cuckolding, and becoming a Queen of Spades on Venus Cuckoldress.com. And now she loves having the opportunity to lend her voice to show people the real, loving, and beautiful complexities of a cuckolding relationship dynamic on her Venus Cuckoldress podcast. To learn more, check out her podcast or visit VenusCuckoldress.com. I'm going to spell it out. VenusCuckoldress.com. And now it's interview time. But first...
I don't know about you, but as a vulva-owning individual, I feel like I need to be extra attentive to my surroundings, and having something that may give me some added safety, such as the She's Birdie keychain alarm, has given me some peace of mind. Birdie is a compact, lightweight personal safety device designed to be easy to carry and simple to use. When you activate your Birdie with the quick pull, the alarm will emit a loud 130 decibel siren and flashing strobe light to help deter an attack. And unlike pepper spray or other deterrents, Birdie is no danger to you.
Birdie also makes a great and affordable gift. I gave a number of the women in my life a Birdie, and they love it. And right now, She's Birdie is offering our listeners 15% off your first purchase when you go to shesbirdie.com/shameless. Go to She's Birdie, spelled SHESBIRDIE.com/shameless for 15% off your first purchase. That's shesbirdie.com/shameless. Join the flock, y'all. And now it's showtime.
All right, everyone, it is interview time. So this interview, this guest, was brought to us by one of you lovely listeners. If you're listening, we love you. Thank you. Actually, we love all of our listeners. And we get a lot of not only feedback, but direction from our listeners. Some of it constructive, some not so constructive. And we listen to all of it. And some of it we actually put in action, such as this. So we have Venus the Cuckoldress here because when we did an episode and we were commenting on cuckolding and hot wifing, we were off on some of the information. We had a number of lovely listeners that sent us their feedback saying this is actually what this experience is, or I identify with this, and here's what's really going on. And then we were like, well, we need to have a whole episode on this. So hence why we have Venus the Cuckoldress, who has a whole podcast and is deep in this world, to share her lovely knowledge. And welcome, Venus, to our show. Welcome to Shameless Sex.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk about something I love so much. So thank you.
We're excited to learn with you. And we were already talking right before this. And so just know that April and I are going to fuck up the terms because
there's a lot of grammar involved in cuckolding. So I love grammar and I love listening and learning.
And we'll probably share a little info on hot wifing too, because I think when we talked about it before, it was thrown in a same category, and there's differences here. So let's start with the same question though that we always ask all of our guests. So how did you get to where you are in the field of sexuality?
Such a great question. So when I was 29, I was vanilla as fuck. And I had no idea there was anything other than monogamy out there. And I started reading Dan Savage's column, Savage Love. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but I love him. Yeah. And so my mind was blown, and that just flipped the switch for me in order to be able to pique my curiosity and learn and be like, oh my God, there's something else out there. There's not just this one way of doing things. And so from that point onwards, for the next 10 years, I was, exploring non-monogamy and everything like that, but I still didn't really find what I was looking for until a bit later on. And I didn't even know it existed. So that's why I'm so outspoken as far as this kind of relationship goes, because I had no idea it even existed.
Well, and you are the cuckoldress, we'll call you, or self-proclaimed, or maybe you are the world-renowned cuckoldress. So I want to cut right to the cuckolding chase and ask you about what is cuckolding and who's into it and why do they like it? So a multi-tiered question for you here.
Yeah. Okay. So the basics of cuckolding is that it's a one-sided open relationship. So she is given the gift of sexual non-monogamy by her boyfriend or husband. And in return, she gives him the gift of being involved in some way. It can be watching, listening about it, or, finding out about it at home, or getting pictures or videos or whatever, just including him in some way. And so that's what cuckolding is in a nutshell. So it's a gift that you give each other. It's a one-sided open relationship. Who's into it? A lot of fucking people are into it.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Yeah. There has been some research done recently that suggested more than 50% of men fantasize about cuckolding scenarios, and about 30% of women. So that's a lot of people thinking about cuckolding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what would a cuck, also someone who's interested, because there's a humiliation aspect here, or is it control? Maybe you can elaborate on that. So the person that wants to be cuckolded, who's saying, "Hey, nice lady of mine,
Yeah, the why, right?
Yeah, the why, because there's consent here too. It's not a non-consensual thing, and yet there is maybe elaborate as a humiliation power play, and like what are they getting out of it?
Yeah, so this is the thing is it seems so one-sided. Because a lot of people, they're like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why does she get all of this fun, sexy stuff? And he doesn't. Like, this makes no sense to me. And so there's actually a lot in it for both people involved because they love it that way. Like, he doesn't want to be with other women. He just wants her to be with lots of other guys or one guy or whatever. And so they both love it that way. They both get a lot out of it because a lot of people think that it's just about the sex, but it really isn't. Like, what is cuckolding is not just like a script in a porn video that you see. A lot of people do think that's what it is. That you just, a guy watching his wife, but there's so much that goes on within that scenario that is mind blowing because you already love each other so much. You trust each other so much. You have this deep bond and connection that you would have with someone who you have a loving, committed relationship with. But having these kind of sexual experiences where it's so emotional, both for the cuck, the guy, because, he's got these like soup of emotions going on. And I call it cuck angst, where he's just feeling like turned on, but also anxious and a little bit nervous and a little bit jealous but just like it's crazy sexy. And it's just all of these huge emotions that he's got going on. And she is in turn feeding off of that. Like it's, for me anyway, like the more turned on he gets, the more I'm just like, oh, I fucking love this, And so there's so much going on there. The people think it is really kind of unfair or one-sided, but it's actually enormously loving, kind of beneficial relationship.
Is it gender specific? So is it typically the penis owner is the cuckolder? The cuck. Oh, the cuck. Mm-hmm. And then the cuckoldress is the vulva owner? Is it gendered like this?
Usually.
Okay. Because
I would say like 99% of the time mm-hmm. It's like that. But there is the reverse, and it's called a cuck queen. So instead of a cuckold, it's called a cuck queen, and it's spelled Quean. And so that's where it's the girlfriend or wife who's like having these kind of angsty emotions. She's sexually faithful to him and he's not to her, and he kind of like, rubs her face in it a little bit. So it does exist. It's not very common. I haven't come across it, I think maybe only once in 6 years. So, but it does exist.
I would imagine. So I think people who are listening who are finding this really hot and also maybe a little confused at the same time. Awesome. Good for you. Feel into that. Just take your time and feel into that. And for the people like, I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense to me. Because the anxiety part and I'm sure, jealousy comes up, whether it's polyamory or monogamy or all the things. It's on all the pieces here. And what we discover around those emotions, it's what we do with it and how we handle it and how it works with our body. And we're different. A lot of it is about our life experiences, our, parenting wounds and attachment wounds and et cetera. And, fetish and kink and all these things, they often can come from experiences in the past. And so instead of the question of, why would anyone be into that? It's more this understand that we are all just so, so different. And the way eroticism and desire and arousal works is so fascinating to me. It's just so, especially as someone who works with people and gets to see the inside of different people's minds and what gets them going and what turns them on. And it's the beauty of it is how dynamic it is. And I know some people like, humiliation would feel terrible to me, and that's okay if it would for you, because that's you, right? There's nothing wrong with it. And for the person who's like, something about me when I feel this power play humiliation thing where someone else is owning me and telling me that like they're just gonna go fuck the neighbor and I can't do anything about it, and by the way, here's some sexy pictures and you have to watch, ha ha ha, my cock gets hard. It is like more common than what people think. And this isn't in our list here. So do you have a partner? I'm going to kind of dive in your personal life a little bit. Like, is this something that you live out regularly, or you just dive into here and there?
Yeah. So I met this guy online. He was my first cuck boyfriend. He's the one who introduced me to it. And from that point on, I was just like completely hooked. That was a long distance relationship that was a bit difficult to manage long term. So that ended. And then I ended up finding someone who was really, really, really wonderful. And we were, in the midst of planning our life together. And unfortunately, he got sick. He passed away. I took a break from all of this for a very long time. And then I was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? I just can't see myself going back to a different kind of relationship ever. I really need this to feel fulfilled in my life. So I've been single for a while now, happily single, and focusing on sharing my love for this lifestyle. I hope that maybe one day I'll find that again. I mean, it's fucking hard as it is to find love, but
yeah, especially during COVID. Jeez.
Right. Like everything's just not lining up right now, but I hope that one day I will be able to.
So we, this episode was brought to you by a lack of our knowledge on cuckolding and hot wifing. And I know that you know way more than us about this topic as well. So we would love to discuss how is cuckolding different than hot wifing? And if you can teach us more and the listeners more about hot wifing than we know already, which isn't very much. So anything you teach us is great. That would be really helpful.
Yeah. I'm, to be quite honest, still, I don't feel like I fully grasped it because it's a fairly new kind of offset of cuckolding, this hot wifing. Because I'm not, I identify with, and I love the cuckolding aspect of it because I do love the teasing, I do love that it's all about her and stuff like that. So that's what I gravitate to, but I'm still kind of like trying to wrap my head entirely around this hot wifing thing. But I will tell you the easy difference. Is that you've got cuckolding where she's fucking other guys and he's not. You've got hot wifing, she's fucking other guys and he's not. But there is a real difference there in that, like, there's not much humiliation or teasing. And I hate that word humiliation. It's more like loving humiliation. It's like, I'm going to tease it. I'm going to fucking rub your face in it kind of thing because it's fun. And there's not much of that at all in hot wifing. So there is that. Usually that's involved at least, could be really subtle even in a cuckolding relationship. But then there's this aspect of sexual denial. So in my opinion, no matter which kind of relationship it is, I feel like the whole thing about cuckolding or hot wifing is that she's fucking someone else when society, it's taboo, right? Mm-hmm. Society says she's not supposed to do that. She's supposed to be with you. And so there is some form of actual denial there in that, like, you're not getting it, someone else is. And so, but that it can be really pronounced within cuckolding. So it could be a denial of like, well, you're not going to have any sex from me until I'm finished with my lover or whatever. Ooh. And then, or like whatever. And then, but in hot wifing, that doesn't seem to be an aspect. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have sex with each other at all in a cuckolding relationship. A lot of people think that there's some severe, like, sexual denial always in cuckolding. Is not the case. But in hot wifing, that's like, you guys still have a very regular, robust sex life. In fact, he might actually, the husband or boyfriend might actually join in at some point with you and your other guy. And that would be like normal. But also to differentiate the two, cuckolding is all about her. She's the one who is in the driver's seat. She's going to want to make these decisions. He's putting her on a pedestal saying this is entirely about you. And whereas with hot wifing, it's more about him. It's more about what the husband or wife or husband or boyfriend wants. And he's the one who kind of sets things up, makes these decisions, kind of choreographs things and stuff like that. That's usually what those two things look like. And that's how they're a little bit different. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a negative stigma behind that word cuck or cuckold, that it's used as an insult often online. And there's this idea that to be a cuck or a cuckold, you're like some kind of weak loser, pathetic or whatever, less of a man. And that's total bullshit. But because there is that stigma around that word. I think a lot of guys have not wanted to identify with that. So therefore there came this kind of like hot wifing subset where they were like, no, I'm not weak. I'm not beta. I'm like, I'm still a man's man, a masculine, whatever. So it's going to be more hot wifing. And I get that. I totally get that. You also get these labels of stag and vixen happening within hot wifing. You'll hear those terms as well. Same thing. I think it's just a way of deviating from that cuck label.
It's important to note too, it's something that came up that I think people are really obsessed with labels. And for the most part, it sounds like both of these terms and experiences are primarily with folks that are monogamous, but you could be in an open relationship, you could be single and into cuckolding or hot wifing or polyamorous, or is this primarily
it doesn't sound like monogamy to me. It sounds like its own
but
a
you
different
could have
version.
like a primary partner.
But that would still be non-monogamy though. So they're in it's some form of non-monogamy. But it's because my understanding of hot wifing is it doesn't necessarily mean that the wife or the girlfriend is even touching other people too. That you can have hot wifing and it could just be flirtation. It could be her going out and looking all sexy and having all these guys being like, and you're like, yeah, that. And there's my understanding. This is my learning from our listeners actually. Who were like, I'm a hot wifer. I'm not into cuckolding because I don't like the humiliation aspect. That wouldn't feel good to me. But what's really hot to me is to see my wife, girlfriend desired, and it's not always even her being touched, but going out there. And so I think that there's a lot more of that idea of compersion, that feeling pleasure from your partner, receiving pleasure in hot wifing. And I think it's also obviously in cuckolding too. Yeah. And then there's this added part in cuckolding that seems to have, they both have power though. If you're saying that in hot wifing, that more so the stag, the penis owner is the one, and I don't know if it's necessarily them calling the shots. Maybe they're setting more of the boundaries. I guess they're probably more like, here's my boundary, here's not my boundary. Whereas in cuckolding, she's like, fuck your boundaries. And maybe she's not saying it that way. Maybe she's loving, like, you know what, this is, and he's saying, my boundaries don't even matter. It's all about you, whatever you want. And so there's that difference there that I think, depending on what you're into, can be beautiful. And I think we're talking about categories. We get in these boxes about monogamy, non-monogamy. Totally. And I think, it just sounds like there's in the non-monogamy box, air quotes, is so dynamic. There's so many things that can go in there, but it might not even involve touch. I guess that's another question for you. Do you know of people who do cuckolding and sex and touch isn't even really a part of it? Like, can be just an energetic thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of the relationship. I mean, I think there's this misunderstanding about cuckolding is just a guy watching his girlfriend or wife fuck somebody else. And I think that's because that's the typical porn script that you see. If you do any porn search for cuckolding, that's exactly what it is going to be. It's going to be this guy and he's sitting there and he's watching his girlfriend. And so that's what people just automatically assume that's what it is, when it's so much more than that. It's, oh my God, the fun parts are the flirting with somebody else, the sending a screenshot of some text messages and like all of those little things, or picking out something to wear. Like it's or just going to a bar and, your boyfriend or husband is sitting far away, pretending not to be with you and watching you flirt with other guys. Like that is like the biggest mind fuck for these guys, and they love it. It's so hot. I mean, yeah, why wouldn't you love that? But yeah, you'll find that with cuckolding couples, hot wife and couples, the guy, he really will go on and on and on about how sexy and wonderful and beautiful and incredible his girlfriend or wife is. He really is like, she's everything to him. And you'll find that like just huge level of adoration in this kind of relationship.
Okay, time for a quick break. This podcast was made possible by Uberlube. It's a luxurious silicone lubricant that enhances sex and intimacy. We receive emails from listeners who have tried Uberlube, and the feedback is unanimous. We never knew lube could be this good. It's also less likely to throw off the pH than most other lubes, and there are thousands of doctors recommending Uberlube to their patients, whether they want to make their hot sex even hotter or for folks experiencing dryness.
Uberlube is without a doubt my favorite lube. It has no flavor, no scent, and feels absolutely amazing on my body. And it isn't just for sex. I use it to tame my hair frizzies, to prevent chafing, and I even put some in my mouth before an oral sex session. Totally ups my blowjob game. Oh, and the bottle, it's beautiful. It looks like a cosmetic product, so I just leave it out on my nightstand, totally shamelessly. To learn why we think it's the best lube on the planet, check out uberlube.com and use code SHAMELESSSEX for 10% off, plus free shipping. Again, that's uberlube.com and use code SHAMELESSSEX for 10% off and free shipping.
This podcast was also made possible by Dipsy. If you're like me, sometimes it's challenging to get into the mood and into your erotic body. That's why I, along with many of my clients, are huge fans of Dipsy. Dipsy is an audio app full of short, sexy stories designed to turn you on anywhere, anytime. Find stories about off-limits hookups with your professor, or a costume party that takes things to the next level, or maybe even a story where your partner tells you exactly what to do, or maybe you try a new sex toy together.
They release new stories every week, so there's always more to explore, no matter who you're into or what turns you on. Plus, Dipsy also has wellness sessions to help you learn more about yourself, and bedtime stories and soundscapes to help you relax before you drift off. And for our listeners of the show, Dipsy is offering a 30-day free trial when you go to dipsystories.com/shameless. That's 30 days totally free when you go to dipseastories.com/shameless. dipsystories.com/shameless. All right, back to the show.
I love that.
Okay. Let's say I'm here. I want to approach I always like to use myself because I'm the only one right now on the microphone. And for some folks out there, they might be into this idea of being cucked or cuckolded, right? So advice for folks like me, let's say, who wants to get involved in cuckolding. How can they approach this, whether they're partnered or if they're unpartnered? What are some tips from you, the expert?
Yeah, I would say historically, traditionally, most times the way that this is brought up in a relationship is the husband brings it up to his wife. They've been together for a long time. He's like finally has the guts to bring it up, and he's like, "Oh, this actually really turns me on." And so there's this conversation that goes on between them. That's usually how it has worked in the past. Now I've noticed a lot more younger people, new relationships, singles who are interested in this outside of that kind of committed long-term relationship, and that's unique in its own. I spoke a little bit about the strength of a cuckold, and you were talking about how you have to be able to process those emotions in a healthy beneficial way within a relationship. That can be really difficult, and for a guy to falter and jealousy to take over, and it just fucking snowballs, and all of a sudden you've got all sorts of problems in your relationship. It's a lot easier to work through that as a couple when you've been together for a long time. But when you are a new couple, then that can be pretty devastating to your relationship. So the advice I would give to people, if you're a new couple, younger couple, is to just go really slow, because you're going to wobble a little bit and probably fall down once or twice. And you just want to be able to sort of like catch that right in the beginning and talk about it, and, maybe slow things down or take a break for a bit or whatever. For me, it wasn't that case. I jumped right in. I was just like, I'm head first. Woohoo!
But you were, yes, right. So someone else brought up to you, hey, I'm into this thing. And you were like, oh, that sounds awesome. I get to go and be intimate and get attention from all these other people. And you're going to love that. And then we can still be connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, really? This sounds like the best thing in the whole world.
Is this a fairy tale right now? Okay. So, what about someone who wants to be the cuckoldress? So someone who is in a relationship and they want to start up this conversation. They're having this desire. I feel like this they both might come with levels of shame and fear, of course, because as is a lot of conversations around sex. But this one is like, hey, are you down for me to be in control and go do all of these things? And for you to just support that might be a little more of a challenging role. So what is your advice to those folks?
it's so uncommon for a woman to bring it up to the guy, which I don't understand. Because like, I'm like out there saying, you know what, ladies, this is great. Go for it. But it's still very uncommon for women to be the one who initiates this conversation. I think I've only ever come across it like once, where the conversation came from her, and it was well received. So I will say that talking to single guys out there about this kind of relationship, maybe on like vanilla dating site or whatever, and they don't understand it, they don't really know what it is. I find it helpful to focus more so on the actual relationship, the benefits to the relationship, rather than the sexy parts, because they can sort of like get blinders on with the sexy part and then not focus on a relationship whatsoever, because they're like, oh, this sounds hot, and then forget about everything else. So I would definitely give advice for guys, any single guys out there who looking for a cuckoldress or looking for a woman who wants this kind of relationship. And there's a lot of guys out there looking for it. I would say focus on the relationship part. Find somebody who you can be compatible with in all areas, not just this sexual fantasy.
I have something to
go
comment
for
on
it.
that. Well, so I was going to say, so because that brings up, it's just a tricky thing a little bit in like the dating world, right? For single folks who are dating, because here's the thing. So we're focused on their relationship, but I guess there's a difference between this is a huge part of me and I can't let this go. Like cuckolding is part of my sexual identity. And then there's the, like, I like this thing, but it's not a deal breaker. And so I would say if you're the former, at some point, the initial, maybe not date 1, hey, by the way, but maybe date 2, 3, 4, when you start to see that there is connection there, then to put that out there to see if there is alignment. But if it is the latter, if it's something that I would enjoy, and if this isn't available, the relationship is more important to me, then maybe not so much, because I guess I bring this up because I've worked with clients who are into cuckolding. I've worked with clients who have a lot of shame around it, who've never told their partners before. It's just something that they watch cuckolding porn, turns them on, but they don't share with anyone but their sex and relationship coach. I've worked with clients with various fetishes and kinks and things, and there's this confusion about when it's appropriate, air quotes again, to share this information with someone, yet they're still trying to find a compatible partner. So I guess I'm answering my own question, but maybe what are your thoughts about that? You know, again, if something is a deal breaker, it should, in my opinion, should be shared fairly soon. Probably not the first date, but I don't know, if you're on online dating apps, maybe not Tinder and Bumble, those are more of the mainstream ones. I was gonna say normie mainstream, but if you're on things like #open or Field or these other ones that are more alternative sexuality, you could put that in your dating app. People are ready to read that, and then it will align you with like-minded people. So I guess 2-part question: what do you think about all that? And do you have any recommendations for people who want to get into this? How do they find other people, like dating apps and things like that?
Yeah, I do. This is something I have a lot of experience with. So for me, I'm kind of at that point in my life where maybe in my 20s, I wouldn't bring it up to somebody right away. I'd just be kind of like, oh, I'm just going to date this person and see how it goes.
They're
and then
cute, nice, and hot, yeah.
and then, you know, bring it up later on or something like that. But now I'm just like, you know what? No, I know exactly what I want. So I'm going to bring it up right in the beginning. And actually on my dating profile, it just says, but I will say what it says, because the wording is important. I would stay away from cuckolding. I would stay away from cuck. Just don't even mention those words. There's just too much misinformation out there. And for me, all it says is I'm looking for a one-sided open relationship where you are faithful, I am not, and we both love it that way. And
awesome.
and
so
there you go.
Yeah.
But just putting that out there, I don't find that there's a negative reaction to that. I don't find that people are weirded out by it. And to be honest, even on the vanilla sites, there's a lot of people who put in a profile that they are looking for a non-monogamous kind of or open relationship. This is not something that's weird anymore. It's pretty common. And so I don't feel like I need to feel like embarrassed or ashamed of putting something like that on my profile, but be careful with the wording itself. Because I wouldn't, maybe you could put hashtag hot wife or something like that. Cause that's, again, it's a pretty soft term, but I would avoid like cuckolding altogether.
That's good. I think everyone's going to rewind what you just said and say, what should I say in my profile again?
Yeah.
Hold on, because that's good advice. I think the amount of misinformation out there about so many things, especially in the field of sexuality, is immense. And that's why we have folks like you, Venus, you've been in this world for quite some time, and seems like you have it dialed. So thank you. And please tell us and our listeners where we can find you and your podcast as well. And all of your social handles. I would love to follow you.
Sure. So I started blogging about 6 years ago. That's where it all began. And that's on venuscuckoldress.com. And so there's a lot of stuff on there. If you're curious, you want to learn more, go there. There's a ton of stuff on there. And that's also where you can find my podcast is on venuscuckoldress.com. My podcast is called the Venus Cuckoldress Podcast. It's on pretty much all of the podcast platforms. Started it in January of last year, and now I'm working full time on it. Yay.
Awesome. Super exciting. We'll have all this in the show notes too. People, if they're like, how do I spell cuckoldress? Just go into the show notes. It'll all be in there too.
Yeah.
Is your show all about cuckolding, or are there other things that you cover?
It's just cuckolding.
Ooh, see, that's how much you could talk about it. Like we just
incredible.
barely scratched the surface.
We only just gently scratch the surface. Yeah. So if you want more info about cuckolding, and I love all the terms like cuckoldress and cucked. And what else do we have? Cucking, and I mean, there are so many ways
hot
to
wifing.
Dive into
hot
that.
Wife.
And hot wifing. And I'm really stoked to actually have some knowledge around this. So thank you.
She's my hot industry wife within the sex industry. I like to hot wife. I got with her and watch her get attention from other people. It's very attractive to me. So especially that one time with your high heels by the fire. You know what I'm talking about.
Wow. Well, Venus, thank you. And for all of our listeners right now, whether you're cuckolding or not, maybe you love some wine. And right now is the time to go check out why Amy and I have loved Margins Wine. It is amazing boutique wine made in California by women, actually one woman who's magnificent, and they make really underrepresented varietals of grapes and take them and put them into bottles that you will love. So if you want to go to marginswine.com, there's only 2 releases a year. Check out why we love it. We're drinking it right now. I'm actually out.
I love the Sangiovese. The Muscat Blanc.
But there's always so many new ones every time she releases.
She's brilliant.
So if you want to save some money, you can. If you buy 3 bottles or more, you can save 10%. The codes are on our site. If you buy 6 or more bottles, you save 15%. Go and check it out, shamelesssex.com. And one last invitation to you all. We love you so much. If you love us too, you love what Venus is talking about, cuckolding, and you know that more people need to know about what we're doing, go to iTunes and give us a review. We read every single one, and we love you so much. Tell us that you love us too. All right, y'all. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now. Want to learn more? Go to shamelesssex.com.
And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use code SHAMELESSSEX at purepleasureshop.com.